Hello and welcome to Learn Redis with Python and Django. I'm Xander and I'll be your guide throughout this course. Now this tutorial is part of a full course playlist available for free on YouTube. For a deeper, more structured learning experience, the complete course is also available on Udemy. You'll find all the links and resources in the video description. Now don't forget to subscribe to the channel for weekly promotions, exclusive discounts and Udemy course giveaways. Right, so following along from the previous tutorial where we installed Docker Desktop, now it's time to actually create and run a Redis container. So this gives us a working Redis server without needing to install anything manually. This topic is important because running Redis inside a container keeps our environment simple, controlled, and easy to reset whenever we need. So if you were a little bit skeptical with Docker previously, hopefully this tutorial will see how easy it is to spin up a working Redis server using just a few Docker commands. Right, so I've created a new project folder, opened it up in Visual Studio Code, and now we need to create a Redis container. And because we're going to be creating multiple containers, we are going to be using Docker Compose, which is a YAML file that defines and manages multi-container Docker applications. So instead of just starting each Docker container manually with a long Docker run command, we can describe application or services, networks, and volumes in a single compose file and bring everything up with a simple command. So let's create a new file. That's going to be a Docker compose.yaml file. Now, all of the containers that we start will be in a stack, which we can access easily in Docker Hub. And we can give that stack or project a name. So that's where I start at the top here. So let's call this Redis in action. So now I need to define the services that I want to run, the containers I want to start. So just be careful here. The syntax or the indentation is going to be important. Right, so the first service that we're going to create is our Redis service. So we're going to need an image in order to turn that into container to bring up our live Redis service. In this course, we're going to be using 7.4.3 Alpine. So Alpine simply refers to the base operating system used to build the Docker image. So in this case, we're using the Alpine Linux version, which is just a very small, security-orientated and minimal Linux distribution. A smaller image means faster download and startup times and reduced attack surface. So fewer packages installed means fewer potential vulnerabilities, although in this course we don't have any intention to actually deploy this to a live server. If you are watching this tutorial much later than when it was recorded, there may be newer versions of Redis, and I can't see any reason why those newer versions might not work with the course. But of course, if you do have problems, then do get in touch with any newer versions or simply just use the version that we are using in this course. Right, so we now have the image set. Next up is container name. Now this is completely optional. This is just going to make it a lot easier for us to identify the container in the UI and then potentially programmatically attach and manage the container. I then include restart always. In case Redis stops for some reason, it will automatically try and restart the service, which can be convenient. And then finally, we're going to need to be able to access the Redis service. Now, by default, like I mentioned, the container is isolated, meaning we cannot access by default anything inside the container until we map network ports and open ports on the container so that we can access the service within. So here we expose the container port, the second number here, 6379, to our host machine port, 6379. So on our local machine, whenever we send a message via this network port number, that's going to be captured by Docker and then sent to our container. And Redis by default monitors port 6379 unless you explicitly define otherwise. So therefore, that makes the connection between our machine and the Redis service within the container. Now, as you might imagine, there are a whole bunch of other configurations. This course is not focused on Redis configuration, administration, or deployment. Our focus is on using Redis effectively as a tool for development. So that's learning how to integrate it into applications and leverage its features for building real-world solutions. So this is everything that we need to set up Redis for this course. Right, so let's see this in action. Just bring up the terminal, Docker Compose up, build, and the D flag. So this command is doing three things. First of all, it starts the service defined in our Docker Compose file. That's the up, Docker Compose up, the build. So this forces a rebuild of the Docker image before starting the containers. So if we have made any changes, which we probably wouldn't have throughout this course, then a new image will be created and the container will be created from that image. And then the D flag here. So this is detach mode. It runs the container in the background. So without D, you would see logs streaming in this terminal, and we would have to create a new terminal in order to interact again. With the D flag, your terminal is going to be free to do other things after starting the containers. Now, this is the only command you're going to need throughout the whole course. Anytime you want to download any of the source code to connect it to any of the modules, just run this command and everything will start. Now, depending on your network, that's going to take a couple of seconds to download Redis, which should be quite a small image. And then now I'm told that the container has started. So back in Docker desktop, we can now see we have a later version of Redis right here in green, indicating that it's in use. And you can see it's only 61 meg. It's a very small image. And now looking at the containers, we have our compose stack name as defined in Docker Compose, and then we have our first container running. So we can go into that container, have a look at any logs to see if there are any issues starting the container. Looks like we're good to go. Now that we have this service running, it would be useful to have some simple way to interact and view what's happening inside our Redis service. So in the next tutorial, we're going to take a look at Redis Insight, which is a free graphical tool made by Redis, so the company that makes the Redis service, to help developers and admins visualize, manage, and then optimize their Redis databases.